I'll be honest, it was the fact that you can make so much money for less work than you would in a typical 9 to 5.
Hanish, thanks for coming on the Sales and Sports podcast. For an introduction, what do you do?
So I work for Byway Travel. So we are a flight-free travel company utilizing AI to build really great trips for people that want to reduce their carbon footprint, but also go on epic holidays across Europe.
Love it. And I'm going to dive into Byway Travel a little bit and how your journey into the space. But I want to flip it for the sports fans because it is a Sales and Sports podcast. Unfortunately, we've got another Man United fan on the podcast.
Yeah.
So I want to start there. As I watched the game last night, the 3-2, Højlund was on fire. What are your thoughts on Man United at the moment, the new manager? Maybe talk to me about Ten Hag and the last maybe decade at Man United, being a Man United fan.
You're killing me, Jack. It's been hard. It's been really difficult being a United fan over the last decade. I grew up watching Ronaldo, Rooney, Tevez tearing up the Premier League.
Yeah.
And now I have to deal with Ten Hag, who hasn't got a clue, didn't have a clue. So yeah, it's been a really horrid time. Haven't really watched football too much. I'll catch the highlights when things are good, and when things aren't good, I'll go back to, I don't like football, don't really watch it, if anyone asks. But yeah, I think the new manager's promising. I kind of think we should have given Van Nistelrooy more of a chance. I like the football we were playing under him. It felt like we were watching the old United again. But we'll see. We'll see what Ruben Amorim has to offer.
Interesting. Because I think the thing with Ruben Van Nistelrooy, he knows the club. He got them playing good football.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of history there. I think he's quite close to Ferguson as well. So would have been good. But now he's at Leicester or Coventry?
Not sure where he's
Leicester, I think. Leicester. Interesting. So we'll see. And then in terms of the similarities between sales and sports, do you see any out of interest?
I do. I think if you're going to make it in sports, you have to be resilient. And that really translates into sales. If you're going into a sales job where you've got to make 100 cold calls a day, you're going to get 99 no's in a day sometimes. And it'll be that 100th call that you make at 10 to 5 on a Friday afternoon when you're about to pack it in. And that guy will pick up and be like, oh, hey, let's talk. And that'll be the one that gets you an appointment, and it could even be a sale.
Love it. So talk to me about your journey. There's a lot of listeners that are thinking about breaking into tech, maybe don't know where to start, maybe considering their options. I know your journey. For the listeners, take me back to your school days. What did you study? Talk to me about your first couple of years being a professional and how you ended up into tech sales at the moment.
Yeah, I'd say you really don't need to have a background in sales, or you don't even have to be an extrovert like people think. I was a massive introvert at school. I did subjects like maths and physics and IT. Went into engineering at uni thinking I was going to be an engineer, then changed my mind, said I want to go into finance. Never worked a day in my life as an engineer, went straight into accounting. Did that for a few years. COVID hit. So things changed again, got almost made redundant a few times. And at that point, I decided to make a switch in my career. I said, this is kind of make or break now. What do I do? I really want to do accounting, or do I want to do something else? And then kind of just fell into sales after a conversation with a friend who was working at a sales company. He said, yeah, come join us. And then it all kind of kicked off from there.
Nice. And what started that interest from your friend? Was it the financial rewards? Was it the fact it was COVID and you're looking for a change? Was there anything because lots of people fall into sales, right? So what was it that spurred that drift in?
I'll be honest, it was the fact that you can make so much money for less work than you would in a typical 9 to 5. And if you're good at it, you can really make serious money for not so much work in comparison to those 9 to 5 jobs. Like accounting's like a real hard graft. Like if you want to be good at it, you have to study. You've got to put the hours in. You're working late. You're working weekends. Sales, you're in control. And if you get good at it, and if you learn all the techniques that you would learn on the Entr course, I mean, those are things I hadn't learned. I didn't know any of that stuff when I fell into sales. It's only when I joined Entr that I realized things exist, like the medic technique, BANT, all of these things, value-based selling.
Yeah.
And it's these kind of things that will really kind of kick your career off and kind of take it to new heights.
Love it. Love it. And I guess in terms of taking a step back, like I completely agree, by the way, about working in a 9 to 5 role and not seeing the rewards financially, because the brilliant thing about sales, but specifically software sales, is you're not working crazy hours. You're working 9 to 5, maybe 9 to 6. Obviously, it's hard work when you're in the office and you're maybe putting in a bit of overtime, but you're not working night shifts. And, what I loved about working in software sales was the fact you can earn double your base salary, and the earning potential is not capped. It's, what you put in, you get out. So that for me was one of the main benefits, right? Out of interest, what were you selling when you made the transition from accountancy into sales? What were you initially selling?
Initially, it was essentially advertising. That's kind of the bare bones of it. It's kind of reducing it down to a lot less than what it was. But yeah, that's pretty much it. But we were selling into kind of really big companies. We were targeting companies that made kind of over 20 million a year in revenue. And you're kind of looking at really high level people. So you're not targeting people at the management level. You're going for the C-suite, you're going for the CEO, marketing directors, CMOs, that kind of level. So it was it was almost like you're being thrown at the deep end. It was a really good introduction to sales, because it was just like, right, get on the phone. I want you to call this CEO. And you're like, I've never spoken to a CEO in my life before.
Yeah.
You're going to make me cold call this guy who never met me. And like, yeah. And like, okay. But then you do it and you're like, oh, okay, these are normal people. They might be a little bit more important in terms of the work they do, but that doesn't make them any less of a person that you meet on the street. And if you met them outside of work, you're probably going to have a really great conversation with them. If you met some CEO in the pub or whatever, just over a drink, you could really find that you connect with them, and that could lead to an opportunity. Why can't it be the same way with a cold call? You've got to approach it or the way you have to approach it is not to think about it too much.
Yeah. Easier said than done, but having that sort of positive mindset, most of the time you figure out, it works for the best, and you can sort of ease into it. So post that job, was that your final sales job before coming on to Entr? Did you do any other roles, or was that your, I guess, last experience before joining the program?
I had one more. So after I left that job, I started working for a water softener company. So that was slightly different. It was more in-home selling and demonstrating what a water softener does, long and short of it.
Yeah.
And selling in the home, it was a little bit more, I guess you get a little bit more instant gratification because you can make a sale on the spot more often than not. And the hit rate is a lot higher. The hit rate is more 60 to 80%.
Really?
In that role, yeah. If you can demonstrate the value of it. But it's skills that I learned in the previous job where you'll get 100 no's before you get a yes. That gave me the skills to actually be good at this second role. If I hadn't done that job before, I would have sucked at this job, because it's all about confidence.
Yeah.
It's all about knowing that you know more than the person you're talking to. It's a really weird thing.
Yeah.
It is. You're not saying you're smarter than that person, but you have to really get across that you know your product.
100%.
It's all about trust.
Yeah, all about trust and product knowledge. Okay, so that sounds like you built up like a really core skill set. And I say to anyone that's looking to break into software sales, who is getting a CV rejected or is struggling, always get some sort of sales experience or client-facing experience. So that's a really good. It sounds like you had a really solid. I know you had a really solid background before coming on the program. How did you come across Entr, and what made you? Obviously, if you studied software or engineering at university, you were always tech curious, but what sparked the interest to come on the Entr program and break into software sales?
So I'd seen a few tech boot camps flying around on Instagram, and it just kind of sparked a seed of interest. And I thought, this is a space I need to be in, because tech is where the world's going. It's where all the money's flowing. If you're not part of it now, then you might miss the boat. But having said that, I think this boat is going to be sailing for quite a long time. Tech's not going anywhere. So I'd say it's still a very good time to get in. What was the question? Sorry.
How did you come across us, and what sparked the interest? So you saw a couple of boot camps on Instagram. Was it the same with Entr? And yeah, what made you decide to make the call? Is because you realized tech is the way forward, and yeah, I guess you came on the program from there.
Yeah, pretty much. I think it was more of a quality thing. When I saw the Entr adverts online, I just thought, this looks a lot more polished than whatever else I'd seen. And obviously after I spoke to you and I had the first conversation, I was like, okay, this is legit. Like, this guy knows what he's doing. He knows what he's talking about. He's done it before. He's been through the process. So yeah, again, like I said, it's all about trust and knowing who you're dealing with. And you came across really well. And that's pretty much why I decided to go for it.
I appreciate that. That's really kind, by the way, for you to say. And you didn't have to say that. So I really genuinely appreciate that. And I didn't force you to say that if anyone's listening. But yeah, I actually remember our conversation, because it's quite rare you have someone with tech background and a sales background. Obviously, I always remember Man United fans. So that's really cool. So you came on the program. You sound like you had a good experience. You enjoyed, what you had learnt. What was the sort of highlights for you? Was it meeting other members? I know it's probably a bit of a smaller cohort in the build up to Christmas, but what did you enjoy? And talk to me about your pathway into where you are today.
I think the best thing about it was the live sessions with people who are in the industry. I think that you can't really beat. Having the ability to talk to someone who might potentially be hiring you, or hiring managers somewhere, to get that level of insight, to be able to ask them questions directly, that's just so powerful.
Yeah.
Because you can send out a bunch of CVs and you might not hear back, but you talk directly to someone who's got the experience. You can tell them, or you can ask them, how do I tailor my CV? How do I tailor my application? How do I go about this?
Yeah.
That's invaluable.
Nice. Okay, cool. Well, it sounds like you're doing really well at the moment in your current role. Would love to know what it was like onboarding there, working in a startup. I know you raised some recent funding as part of the startup. I can't remember if it was before you joined or during your time there, but what do you love about your current role? How is it getting into the industry? As it sounds like you felt confident coming through the program and with your sales background, but what was it like onboarding? What's it like working in a startup?
I think I've been really lucky. Like, this startup has just been great. From day one, I was initially kind of scared that the onboarding would be a little bit all over the place, because when I joined, I think I was employee number 30 something, so it wasn't a lot of people.
Yeah.
But they did a really great job of making sure that my training plan was robust. I knew what I was doing. There was never a day where I felt like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Where do I fit in?
Yeah.
So they did that really well. And ever since then, it's just been a really good journey, if that's a bit weird to say, given that we do trips and journeys. But
excuse the pun.
Excuse the pun. Yeah, that's the word. But yeah, no, it's been really fun. Everyone's really cool. Everyone's really welcoming. I think when you go into a startup environment, you're going to have a really great time if you get in early enough. That can be a really good time to get in, because you get to know everyone who's already been there from the start on a lot more personal level than you might if you go to kind of a mid-size or a larger company where you can kind of get lost in the weeds. And then you start to become more of just a number. So joining a startup in the early stages is great. Yes, we've just raised a great deal of money, which we're putting to good use at the moment to try and improve all our tech.
Nice.
And the other good thing about it is that your ideas have real value. Like the amount of ideas I put into like the general chat on Slack or whatever that have been implemented, you feel like you're making a difference.
Love that, especially if you want exposure to the founding team or you're a creative person. It's quite cool to see the feedback you have from conversations with customers or ideas you have being put into the product. And I guess that feedback loop's a lot shorter than if you worked in a huge corporate company, right?
Oh yeah, there's so many less hoops to go through. It's literally just, oh, I have an idea. Can we do this? Yeah. Make a request for it, and then you can fight for it in the next tech sprint, they call it. So every 2 weeks we have a sprint.
Yeah.
And then we have a meeting where we decide what the tech team are going to work on. And then if you have to fight for your card that you put in.
Nice.
And then that's it. If you win your card, you win your card.
Amazing. And in terms of like the structure, is it pretty flat? Are you in 5 days a week? What's the setup there?
It's really chill. It's remote. So
oh well.
Yeah, 2 days a month in the office are compulsory.
Wow.
But otherwise you can work from wherever you want, as long as you're in the UK, I guess. I've got a couple of guys actually who are based out in Spain and Czech Republic.
Nice.
One of our tech guys is based out in Thailand. He's an Aussie, so he lives out there, living the life. But yeah, and I think we just signed a deal with Deal, who you guys work with.
Yeah.
So that they can live and work from all these places without having to be contractors. They can be PAYE employees, and makes life a little bit easier. But yeah, other than that, we go in 2 days a week, rest of the time from home. We've got an office in London. If you want to use it, you can. There's a bunch of offices around that you can use for the day.
Nice.
Structure, I'd say it's pretty, I wouldn't say it's flat, but it's not like you can't go to the CEO directly with a suggestion or a question or anything. The door's always open.
Nice. So it's kind of fluid. And there's 2 days a month, right?
Yeah.
Really cool. Really cool. And I guess going forward, your role, is it a 360-degree role, like an account executive role? What's your role at the moment? And I guess what's your plans moving forward? Do you enjoy working in a startup environment? You're going to grow with the company? I guess probably probably putting you on the spot there is probably too long to go. But tell me about your role day to day. I know it's not a typical BDR, SDR role, right?
No, not really. This role is more B2C, so I'm dealing with consumers directly, but it's kind of that. It's very similar in the sense that the types of individuals that are booking a holiday like this tend to be the same level in terms of their career as those marketing directors and CEOs that I was talking to in my last role. So the conversations end up being really similar.
Nice.
Things you talk about outside of the job or whatever, but the role right now is selling holidays basically, but they're tailor-made. So you've got to really sit down and think about what you're putting across to them. There's a lot of consultative selling.
Nice.
So there's a big focus on getting the customer on the phone, really nailing down what they want out of this package.
Yeah.
And then putting that together for them, and also making sure it's different so that other providers aren't coming in and beating you to the sale, because you might not think that there's competition, but there is. There's always competition. We've got competition everywhere.
Yeah.
Because they might say, you know what, why am I going to bother spending all this money? I'll just go on EasyJet and book flights. But you then have to present the value of actually slow down, take a longer journey. You've got the time, you've got the money. Do it this way.
Awesome. And in terms of like upskilling, or I guess your day-to-day, have you got any recommendations for sales books or things people can look at? I know you mentioned Medic and BANT and other frameworks, value-based selling, but is there anything you do do you listen to podcasts? What do you do to constantly stay ahead of the game?
So there's a few podcasts that you guys recommended. I forget the name of the one that comes up all the time.
30 Minutes to President's Club?
30 Minutes to President's Club. That's really a great podcast to listen to. Mainly because it puts into practice all the things you learn on the course, the Medic, the BAN, all of this, because all of that can go in one ear and out the other
Yeah.
if you're just listening to it or reading it off a course. It's when you hear how people put these things into action, that's when it becomes really valuable.
Nice, amazing. And I guess for anyone considering breaking into tech sales, how was the interview process? Did you feel comfortable? Was it pretty straight? I know for you it's pretty straightforward. I think you got a job before the program finished, or pretty soon after.
Just about before.
Yeah, just about before. What was the interview process like for you? I mean, you're a pretty calm guy. And I know you've got a bit of experience in sales, and how was it for you though? Would you give any advice to people, I guess, without sales experience, how to manage the interview process, or just general advice breaking in?
I think general advice breaking in is, one, don't try and be the Wolf of Wall Street like that. No one likes being sold to.
Yeah.
So be calm, be collected, be yourself, put a little bit of personality in there, learn to speak well, because that's really important, knowing how to speak well. I think people are much more receptive when they feel like they're talking to a professional.
Yeah.
So try and bring that energy into the job. In terms of the interview process, much the same. Like, just be calm. Don't try and BS your way through an interview or even through a sales call. You might be in the job, and it's so important to be able to admit when you don't know something. One of the best salespeople I ever worked with was just unflappable and unwavering, and in front of any pressure that someone put him under. If he didn't have an answer, he'd openly admit, like, okay, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll get back to you. Same thing applies in an interview process. If you don't know the answer to something, you can just say that, and people value that honesty.
Yeah.
In terms of the interview process itself, you're probably looking at a 4 or 5 stage interview no matter where you go now. It was the same for me. But I think the difference with Byway was that because it was such a small company at the time, I mean, they still do it because the mission there is so important to everyone that they want to make sure they're hiring the right people. So I had to go through about, I think it was 3 or 4 stages. And the final stage was just a casual chat with the CEO and founder.
Nice.
But there are companies out there that really want to make sure they're getting the right people.
Yeah.
And I think when you find a company that's like that, it's going to be a great place to work because, one, they care about their mission. And 2, they're going to care about you. I mean, it sounds weird to say that because a lot of big companies, they don't really care.
Yeah.
You are just a number. But when you find a company that really does care about their mission, it's much more likely that you will have a good experience working there.
100%. I definitely agree. Do not BS an interview. If you don't know the answer, put your hand up. People respect that for sure. And yeah, I think do your research, look at the culture, the values, especially if it's a smaller stage company or an early stage startup. And yeah, I guess, as you said, can't reiterate that enough. Like, getting into a company early is so valuable because you get to be part of the DNA. You get to be part of the early culture. You probably have more responsibility, and there's sometimes perks like equity. I'm not sure if that was part of your package as well, but always quite nice to get.
Yeah, definitely. Look for that as well. Equity was part of the package, and that was pretty attractive as well. It also means that that everyone working there is going to be committed to what they're doing because
On it.
You're on it. Yeah, you have a stake in the success of the company.
Yeah, vested interest.
Vested interest, that's the word. So yeah, look for that. And it's always good to have equity because it drives you and it drives the company. And then if you're driven and you're successful, then that equity you get is only going to be more valuable to you in the future.
Nice. And then last one from me before we wrap would be working remote. How do you find working remote? Do you love it? Do you like to be in the office? It sounds like you've got a good balance, but what's your tips for working remote?
It's a love-hate thing for me. I love being independent and having the ability to work from anywhere. The only downside I'd say is not seeing your colleagues enough. But then it's on you to, like, if you've got the ability like I do to go in to an office whenever you want, take that option up when you can. I'm also lucky I've got a great team as well. Like, it genuinely is a really great place to work. And when we do have those 2 days in the office, I think the company know that it's more of a chance just for us to kind of doss around a bit and catch up really. So it's not, we don't really go hard on those days. We make up for it when we're not there, but
nice.
It's really nice to have that balance.
Nice.
And that understanding as well that, it is just going to be a bit of a catch up. It's going to be rowdy. The office is never quiet on an office day.
Yeah.
But it's really fun.
It's busy around the kettle, and then maybe afterwards if people are staying around to socialize.
Yeah, it gets a bit rowdy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, thanks so much for coming on. Who have United got this weekend?
I don't know. This is how bad of a United fan I've become.
I'm trying to think who they've got, but anyway, we'll save it for the listeners. We could be pumping this out in the next couple of weeks, anyway, so it'll be long gone. But yeah, Hanish, thanks so much for coming on. If people want to reach out to you, where's the best place? Is LinkedIn the best place to get you?
Yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn if you want. I'm happy to answer any questions, give any advice. I'm always there.
Perfect. And then actually the final piece would be advice for anyone thinking of joining Entr.
Do it.
Love it.
That's it.
Thanks so much, mate.
No worries. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure.
Cheers.